Welcome back. This is Cooking or Something Like It. I hope you have enjoyed the last few videos we've done and noticed that the last one had a noticeable uptick in the video quality. We are working with a video editor now who is working to make our videos a lot better. So that trend should continue, and you'll see that we're trying to get a little more professional here, even though we're really not. This week we are going to do something a little more entree focused. Last week we were a little more appetizer focused. So I'm going to do a coffee rubbed steak with a mushroom porter sauce over asparagus. I realize that's a mouthful and it sounds intimidating. It's really not. Just follow along with me and I promise you can do this. It's not hard. That sound tells me that my oven is up to temp, so we are ready to roll. I'm just going to go over what I have on the table here and what I have behind me. I am going to get this butter melting here because we got to get that going. So in front of me I have a London broil. This has been sitting out for approximately 35 to 40 minutes. I did that to bring it up to room temperature. It'll cook a lot better at room temperature. If you have a steak that's cold or possibly even frozen in the middle, it's going to affect your cooking time, and that's going to affect how you can determine how done a steak is. So it's good to let it come up to room temperature if you have the time. Here I have ground mustard. This is my Himalayan salt. You don't have to use Himalayan salt. We've talked about this before. Regular salt works just fine, but this adds a little bit of minerality to the salt. I like it. This is brown sugar. We have cilantro. We have chili powder. This is paprika. This is actually a spicy smoked paprika. It sounds fancy. You can use regular paprika. And we have coffee beans, something a little different today. And in my mortar and pestle here, I have ground peppercorns. Now, I've already ground the peppercorns because, well, you know, it's a little embarrassing sometimes with you watching me chase peppercorns around the counter. So I ground them ahead of time. Behind me, I have asparagus. This is young asparagus. You can tell because it's fairly small. I have mushrooms. This is about a pound of mushrooms that have been destemmed and quartered. I have a dark plum vinegar. I have chopped garlic, of course. And I have a Sam Adams Holiday Porter. Now, this is what I had on hand. I would recommend using a darker beer for what we're going to do, and I'll show you why in a little while. I'm not saying that Sam Adams is the best. Now, I do think this is going to make a very good sauce, but any dark beer, if you have a favorite beer, feel free to use that. So, alright. Now, what am I doing here? Before we really get into the steak, we're going to get the mushrooms softened up a little bit. So over here I have just about a half a stick of butter, give or take, melting in a pan. Into that, I am going to add about a tablespoon of chopped garlic. We're going to turn that heat up there. Set our butter over here. Now, I want to get this going and I want to get this softened up because we're going to use these mushrooms a little later on in the recipe and they will work a lot better if they're soft. At the same time, this is my cast iron skillet. I've talked to you about this before. If you don't have one of these, go get one. This is really a critical piece of cooking equipment for anyone who wants to cook anything somewhat, professionally is not the right word, but if you want to be able to make decent steak, decent chicken, decent pork, you need a cast iron skillet. Go get one. They're really not that expensive, okay? Now, one thing with cast iron, you want it to be hot. So I'm going to start this pan heating up. Now, my butter is melted. Into there, I'm going to put my mushrooms. I'm going to give them a couple quick tosses. And all I'm really looking to do here is just get these mushrooms starting to soften, okay? Now, the rub. Now, I did say a coffee rub, and that is true. Now, what I have here is about 2 tablespoons of whole coffee beans. If you don't have whole coffee beans, you can use ground. It will taste better if you do have the whole coffee beans and you grind them, These beans happen to be Ethiopian Ardi beans. They're my favorite type of coffee. They're really strong. You can smell them. I can smell them just from here. So we're going to take these into the grinder. Okay, I'm sure that was very pleasant for all of you. All right, so coffee into the bowl. We have about a tablespoon of paprika, about a tablespoon of chili powder, a tablespoon of ground mustard. This is a little more than a tablespoon of salt, and so I'm not going to use the whole thing. Save a little bit of that. And about a tablespoon of ground pepper. Right. My mushrooms, another toss over here. Keep them rocking and rolling. Okay. 6 tablespoons of brown sugar. I know it sounds like a lot. It's going to caramelize off. It won't be that sweet, I promise. And then we're going to mix this together. Now if your brown sugar is clumpy, you're going to have to mash it up just like I am. I don't keep my brown sugar perfectly. I even spilled some. Nobody saw that. Alright, so we're going to mix this up. Take this fork, break up the chunks. It happens. You know, brown sugar gets clumpy. It's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. Alright, cilantro. I'm going to take most of the cilantro I have in there. That's probably about a half a cup, give or take a little bit. Okay, so what I have here, I've got a mixture. There are some still chunks of brown sugar in there, absolutely. I can break some of them up with my hand when I do this. So this is pretty well mixed. We're going to take our steak, and we're going to generously coat this, okay? Now, like I said, I can take my hand and break up some of these brown sugar chunks before I do this. I would recommend if you have a bunch in there to do that. So we're going to mash them together. All right. Like I said, generously. And you do want to apply some pressure to this. You want to really push them in there, okay? And you're going to flip it, and you're going to do the same thing. Now, the amount of rub that I made is actually enough to do about 2 steaks. I do have another steak that I'm going to do, and I'm going to freeze, okay? Now, you can do that. If you have a dry rub, you don't have to wet marinate everything to freeze it. You can dry rub it. I do have another steak in the fridge, and I'm pretty sure this recipe is going to be good. I could be wrong, but we're going to find out. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be very good, so I'm going to do that with the other one I have in the fridge. Alright, now that I've got that on there, I'll wash my hands off. Now, normally, I would recommend that you let this sit for 3 hours if you have the time. If you don't have the time, don't worry about it. It will still taste good. Don't worry about it at all. One thing I didn't mention, and this is important, you want to get your oven hot. So I want to get my oven up to 315 degrees, okay? Now,
you mean 415?
I'm sorry, 415 degrees. Thank you, Peanut Gallery. Mushrooms are soft. We're going to put them back in this bowl, right? We're going to turn this down, and we're going to put a little bit of water in here. Right? If there's some garlic and stuff in there, that's great. We're going to take our asparagus. I have a little bit of salt and pepper on the asparagus. Put this right in there, just like that. Okay? Alright, now, cast iron is hot. The handle will be hot. So, make sure you use a mitt. I can't stress this enough. So, again, let that steak sit. Flip them over a few times, get that on there really good. All right, once you've got it on there, all right, we're gonna save this for the sauce we're gonna make afterwards. Now, pretty much what I want to do here, hello dog, thank you, you're always a willing participant in these videos. What I'm doing here, let me turn this up a little bit here, is just putting a nice crust on both sides of this steak, okay? So we put a little oil in this pan, we're just going to put a crust on both sides. Once we get a little bit of a crust on it, it's going to go right in the oven to finish up and bring up the temperature. Cheers. Alright, so we're not cooking this all the way through on the stove. We're just crisping both sides. It helps to seal a lot of the moisture in. Alright, so we'll give that a couple minutes there. Our asparagus, the water in our pan here is coming up to temp. Now if you'll notice, I'm trying to do all this stuff in real time so that you can see, yes, I did do a little bit of prep work, but the beginning to end on this is really not that long, okay? Now I'm going to take a little bit of this plum vinegar, and just drizzle it over the asparagus. Not a lot. Just give it a little bit of bite. Okay. Now that we've had this in here for a second, look at that. See how that's nice and dark? That brown sugar caramelized real nicely on there, and we've got a real nice layer on there. And we're going to let that other side go for a minute. All right. Now, when you do a steak on the stovetop like this, it's easier to do it like what I'm doing and then finish it in the oven. Depending on how well done you like your steaks, if you like a really well done steak, this is the best way to do it. Because I'm not going to be able to get an internal temperature on this steak that is high enough to make this well done if I just do it in the pan. I'm going to have to bake it. And don't think of it really as a baking. Just think of it more as a finishing touch. Now, one quick little point for how to tell how done a steak is. With this, once it goes in the oven, I'm going to give it about 5 minutes. To test to see how well done your steak is a real easy trick. I'm going to show you right here. Take your hand, okay? By your index finger, press against this part of your hand. That's rare, okay? Take your middle finger, medium. Medium well, well done. All right? Rare, medium, medium well, well done. When I press my pinky against that part of my thumb, it's very hard. This is very soft. It's not 100%, but it's a pretty good indication. So if I press on this right now, it's pretty soft. It feels just like that. Okay. Now that we've crisped both sides, we're going to take this guy right in there. Now we're going to switch over here just to get that asparagus going. All right. We're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to finish this off. I'm going to show you how to make a sauce to glaze it. We're going to finish the asparagus and plate this. Real simple dish, and we'll see you in just a second. We're back. We're about to pull the steak out. Alright. So, when you cook a steak like this, keep in mind that that steak is going to continue to cook after you take it out of the oven. So, we're going to take this guy and we're going to let him rest. Look at that. That came out really beautiful looking. Okay? Now, in this pan, we're going to make our pan sauce. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deglaze the bottom of the pan with my beer. Now, one tip when you're using a carbonated beverage, you've got to let the bubbles bubble. Trust me on this. I've made plenty of messes. Alright? So pour it in slow, let the carbonation come out. Alright, so our beer is in there. We're going to take a spatula. We want to get all that stuff that was on the bottom, all of that goodness that cooked off that steak. We want to get that back into solution because that's where all our flavor is, okay? Now, to this, I have a little bit of the rub that was left over. I'm not going to use all of it, but I'm going to throw some of this in there. There's some brown sugar in there. There's our spices that we used in there. So we're going to throw that in there. Take our fork, we're going to mix this up. Now, because we had brown sugar on the steak, you might get a little bit of blackening in there. Like it's you know, essentially burnt sugar. It will dissolve, don't worry. And if it doesn't, so what? It will taste good, I promise. But just mix this up real good, okay? I'm gonna give this guy a little more heat. Now, our asparagus is getting just about done. So to that, I'm gonna add just a little bit of butter to finish him off. All right, we're gonna let that do its thing over here. To our glaze, I'll use my butter spoon. I'm gonna add some garlic. All right. Now I'm gonna bring this temperature all the way up because I need to cook that down a little bit. That here. All right. I'm gonna add another extra tablespoon of brown sugar. All right. See this starting to boil. Now, I had mentioned earlier that I wanted to soften the mushrooms. So here are my mushrooms, right in here. Now, the reason I softened them earlier is just to cut down on cooking time. That's it. That's the only reason I did that. All right. Asparagus is cooking along here. Now, you want the asparagus to be softened but not mushy. So, let this guy go a little more. That butter melt. Want this to come up to temp. Don't want to lose sight of my cooking mitt so I burn myself. Not that I've ever done that. Alright. I'm going to let that guy come up to temp. Now, the steak here. You can see I don't have a whole lot of juices coming off this. That's good. I want to leave this for about 5 whole minutes. Now, you can even go a little bit longer to let that continue to cook internally. The temperature of the steak will rise 5 to maybe even 10 degrees just while it's sitting here. What you're doing right now is you're letting all the juices absorb back into the meat, because as you cook that, obviously you're driving juices out of it. The reason we seared it to start with was to keep the juices sealed in, but we want them to reabsorb throughout the whole steak. Give this a stir. Let that go. All right, our asparagus is getting pretty close. So, I have here a nice serving dish, all right? Now, if you are concerned about how to plate this, I'm going to show you a nice way to plate it if you're going to present it at a dinner party. If you're just going to serve this at home to your family, you can plate this individually. You don't have to go as extravagant as this. Not that this is extravagant, but I'll show you how to do it if you're going to serve it as a main dish. I do kind of need to keep an eye on this though, because if it gets out of hand, we're going to have a mess. All right. So, I have my asparagus here. I don't want all this liquid, all right? Now, I can do this and get a lot of it to steam off. or we can just pluck it out with tongs, which is what I'm going to choose to do here. Notice this is a rectangular plate. I'm going to go left to right with the asparagus and position them this way. It just makes a better presentation. Don't worry, I'll show you guys this. Give me just a second to get these on here. Almost lost one there. Alright, so you can see that we've just got a really nice bed of asparagus. We don't have anything fancy yet. We're getting there. Let that cook. Have a sip of our beer. Alright. Take some heat down here. Let some of that steam off. Now, the last step we're going to do with this sauce is to add butter. Now, if you're on a diet, this sauce is not for you. Right? I'm going to add about a half a stick of butter to this. And trust me, it will make it taste good. It's not going to hurt for the calories. But trust me on this one. All those sauces that you see at your fancy restaurants, if you knew how much butter was in them, it would make you cry. So, live a little once in a while. Alright, so we're going to let this melt down. While that's doing that, we're going to cut this bad boy. All right. All right. Got my meat fork. Got a nice serrated knife. Now, if I did this right, it should be pinkish to red in the middle. Just like that. Wow, that smells good. Now, if you want it, you can see that's rare. Okay, that's a good rare steak right there. It's warm in the middle, but it's not. It's still very dark pink. All right. Alright, let's finish this bad boy off here. Okay, you got your steak, all right? We're going to shut this off. You're going to take a spoon that I don't have in my hand right now. Take our mushrooms. We're going to go right across the top. And then, just because we're fancy, we'll take a little bit of our cilantro. And there you go. Dry coffee rubbed steak with a mushroom porter sauce over asparagus. Now, if you make this and your guests are not impressed, you need to get new friends. This is Cooking or Something Like It. Check out our website. It's cookingorsomethinglikeit.com. If you like the videos, give our Facebook page a like, share it with your friends, tell them to like it. Tell your friends, talk about it, love us. We'll see you next time.